I was born in Shagamu, Remo Division of Ogun State, July 12, 1923. My parents, both of blessed memory, were Chief Daniel Ogunlesi, the Otunbalogun of Makun, Shagamu, a blacksmith by profession, and my mother was Madam Comfort Efoshola, a trader. My education began in 1930 at St. Paul's School, Shagamu, St. Paul's Primary School, where I spent only 6 years instead of the normal 7 years, which should have been 1930 to 1937. I left for Lagos in 1936 to enter CMS Grammar School, Lagos, in Form 2 instead of Form 1. That was in January 1936. That was the school at Broad Street, not the present Bariga School. And I finished in December 1940. Somehow, I was nicknamed professor in Standard 3 in 1933 at the primary school by my class teacher. And the angels must have said amen to that gesture, because what she said at that time came to pass later in my life. It came to pass at the University of Ibadan, 1965, to the glory of God. I would regard the years 1941 to 1947 to what I call my Yaba years, the same Yaba in Lagos, because I spent the first 18 months of that period at what was then called Yaba Higher College, which in fact was the pre-medical class equivalent to the higher school of today, higher school certificate class. And that was followed by 5 years, 1942 to 47, at the Yaba Medical School, where I did preclinical training in anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, and pharmacology. This was followed by my clinical training at the General Hospital, Lagos, Mercy Street, and the Institute of Public Health in Lagos at that time. I obtained a diploma in medicine called the Licentiate of the School of Medicine of Nigeria in August 1947. And I became registered as a medical practitioner in Nigeria for the first time in August 1947. The years 1947 to 49 are what I would describe as the turbulent years of my life, because of the title attached to my training as an assistant medical officer. A medical officer is a person trained in a university who has a degree. Therefore, those of us who are trained in a non-university medical school were termed assistants. I was an assistant medical officer for 2 years, 47 to 48, and as would come up later, I became a medical officer in 1950. That's after I found my way to England in 1949, where I was able to break away. Because I was in England, I was allowed to take examinations by English medical students. And so I was able to obtain the same qualifications as those trained in England. It took me 1 year. When I returned to Nigeria, I became appointable as a medical officer. That's at least 6 years earlier than if I had not gone to England. And it created some turbulence, which I don't want to go into details now, because the expatriates who ran the service at that time preferred that I should not be employed, because I would disturb their roster. I would be senior to those who had not gone to England, just because I went to England to do an exam. But by the mercy of God, two people whom I will never forget, Professor Yedino, this Yedino's father, and one Alhaji Badamoshi, they were on the Civil Service Commission. They forced the government to employ me. Since I wanted to serve the country, they said I didn't commit any crime other than that I went to England. So I was appointed a medical officer in 1950, and I served 6 years in the Western Region Civil Service. After which, I was able to return to England for higher degrees. What was a sabbatical leave. During which period, I then became the first Nigerian to pass the examination of the membership of the Royal College of Physicians of London. I don't know how many Nigerians went to England before even I was born, but nobody attempted that exam there. I was the first Nigerian to attempt the exam. And I was able to obtain the exam because I was fortunate to secure an appointment in London in their postgraduate medical school. This was the best medical school, postgraduate in London, where I served as a house officer for 6 months. I returned to Nigeria in 1958, back to the civil service. I was immediately promoted specialist. I had to be promoted. They had no choice, because I came back with two higher qualifications. No other Nigerian had that type of qualification. So they immediately promoted me a medical specialist. And I believe that was the first time a Nigerian held that position. There were people like Manoa, who was in the sojourn, Majakudome was the ONG, but there was no specialist in medicine, and I was the first. So I took over the Department of Medicine at Adeyo Hospital, which those who established the University College used as the training teaching hospital temporary until usage was built. I was telling you that story. 1961, I transferred to University of Ibadan when a vacancy occurred in the Department of Medicine there, a senior lectureship. Professor Brown, who was the founding, that's why when people talk about first professor, I always want it qualified to say that I was the first Nigerian to be a professor of medicine, but not the first professor of medicine in Nigeria. The first professor was an expatriate. He started what I followed. Anyway, so as soon as he had a vacancy in his department, he in fact invited me to apply, and I was immediately offered a position as senior lecturer. And when I joined the department of the then University College, I became the next in rank. All the others were expatriates, other teachers. And that remained the position until Alexander Brown actually died. He died in office, died in Nevada. And so I succeeded him as the first Nigerian head of that department. That was the position from 1961. When I joined as senior lecturer, I was promoted associate professor in 1962, and a full professor in 1965. And so I served another 23 years as a professor before I retired in 1983. That should tell you enough about myself.